writing is just a blank canvas. I can go crazy if I wanted to. And that is a passion in itself. Yeah, being able to create.
Creative Conversations.
Hey Zouk family, another week, another chance to meet a Malaysian local hero. And I was put in touch by Ida, who gave us a great mic drop. And Ryan is an inspiration for us at Zouk Digital. There's a man who's been in TV and radio for nearly a decade. He could teach us a hell of a lot about amazing content creation. He's traveled the world. I'm very jealous he's met Jennifer Lawrence. He does a hell of a lot of his own content, which everyone in our office thinks is amazing. First and foremost, though, Ryan, how are you?
I'm very well, Joe. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm not gonna lie, man. I actually almost came onto this broadcast completely shirtless. I had to jump and quickly grab a shirt and put it on just before I came on here. So thanks for having me, man.
No, it's a powerful shirt. I like it a lot. It's definitely the best shirt I've seen on Zouk Digital so far. So Ryan, for those in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Las Vegas that may not know you as well as we do in Malaysia, give us a little bit of a intro to your background, because you have a really thoroughbred media background.
I started out on radio and TV here in Malaysia, but I tell you what, man, Zouk Malaysia has very much been a big part of my life. As soon as I finished my shift on radio or TV, I'd come straight to Zouk on a Friday night back, Bass Sonic days and whatnot. But yeah, now I primarily focus on content creation and focusing on my own projects and IPs. And I also help to write as well. I write I did a talk show recently as well. So I've got little projects here and there, but primarily I started out in radio and television. Yeah.
And you traveled the world, and you at one point were the face of interviewing superstar, and Jennifer Lawrence is just one of the many names that you've interviewed. What are some of the highlights of that? Because you must have had some incredible experiences.
Yeah, man, the stories I could tell you, I don't think we could cover in this whole interview, to be honest with you. But specifically Jennifer Lawrence, I was staying at, I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it was a hotel, Beverly Hills, I think it was, in LA. And I remember going down for breakfast that morning. I had to interview both Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. And I actually was in the same lift as Jennifer Lawrence. So I pressed the button, I walked in, I was by myself, and then it opened on whatever floor it was, and it opened, and Jennifer Lawrence was right there with like a friend or something. She walks in, and normally at this point, you'd say hi I completely froze. Like the idea that I was going to be interviewing here in an hour or so, and I had to be full of confidence, completely just went past me, and I just had a fanboy moment right there, and I just didn't say a word, and I just pretty much stared at her while she walked in and didn't say a word, and she got off at the next floor, and I went down to the next floor, and who walks in the next lift? Hugh Grant, like tennis gear with like two other females at the time. I think he was playing a tennis match with them, and that's when I was like, you know what? I'm in Los Angeles. It hit me right there. I am in LA, home of the stars, away from Malaysia. So it was a pretty surreal experience. Yeah.
Hey man, there's not many people get to say that on the average work into two superstars. Who were some of your favorites that you interviewed over the years?
I get to ask that question a lot. Like, what are my favorites versus what I think was the best interview? But my favorite, I would have to say, was probably the most organic interview I had, which was in Sydney, Australia, with one of my heroes growing up during uni days, which was Jack Black. And I say him because it was such an organic experience. It honestly didn't feel like an interview. What it felt like was I was sitting across from a friend, and we were just talking shit the entire time. And that interview was just talking shit. We talked about sarongs. We talked about how his feces is a beautifully tapered piece of shit when it goes down. Like, it was the most random shit ever, but I tell you what, it was the most organic thing. And before the interview even kicked off, I arrived at the interview room. It was at the Sheraton Hotel in Sydney. And I walked to the interview room, which was in a hotel room, and he wasn't even there yet. And then 5 minutes later, he walks in by himself, no entourage whatsoever. He walks in, hands in his pocket, and he looks at me, and he says probably the most Jack Black thing anyone could ever say. And he looks at me and he goes, "I bid you adieu." And he walks right in. And then later on, his entourage comes, but a room service lady comes, and she comes with a tray of a plate full of chicken wings and a big jug of ice water. And she says, is this Jack Black's room? I was like, yeah, he's inside. You can just leave it here. And normally some of these stars, they would have like coffee or an espresso shot or God knows what, gluten-free, I don't know what. But Jack Black that was Jack Black. A jug of ice water and a plate of chicken wings ready to be had after the interview. It was great. Yeah.
Did he share the chicken wings with you?
No, that would have been a great top off at the end of the interview to share chicken wings with Jack Black, but no.
And you were saying, is there a differential between some of the characters you met and the interviews you do? Are there some that are more relaxed before the interview starts?
At the top of my head, no. They at the end of the day, I mean, if I was talking to them by myself, and that was it, maybe they'd be a bit more relaxed. But how these junkets work is they're talking to hundreds of media the entire day. I mean, this is like a full day of work for them. They're interviewing from like 8 o'clock in the morning right up until 8 p.m. at night. And we have about 4 to 5 minutes with these stars. And then it's a switch. The next person from the UK comes in, or from South America. Like everyone from around the world goes to this one location, this one hotel to chat to them. And you only have 4 to 5 minutes. So for them to relax and be completely let their hair down, you don't see it too often. In fact, if you were to ask me the opposite and say who was the most uptight or who was the most non-friendliest, I could tell you quite easily. And I'll give you the exclusive. Like what's his name, Captain America, Chris Evans, wasn't the nicest guy in the world. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't the most forthcoming. Maybe it was a bad day for him. But more often than not, you see these people in a very PC format, and they have a job to do. So you don't usually get a chance to like ask them how their day was. Even it happens that quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, and some of the interviews I've seen, you've really been original with them, and it must be a bit of a challenge to come up with some kind of conversation that's different to the other 100 people they're going to talk to that day. Because I'm sure their days are super generic, but I see you bring a lot of fun into the conversation as well.
100%. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's about standing out and doing it completely different from everyone else. And I'm not going to lie, there are interviews I've done which I've completely not regretted, but I look back on and think like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, why would I wear a Wolverine outfit to interview Hugh Jackman? You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, you feel like an idiot being in like a junket full of professional journalists and interviewers who are all suited up and wearing nice clothes, and you're in a Wolverine outfit. You know what I mean? Like you're rented from like a shop in Kota Damansara. You know what I mean? So I completely forgot your question, but okay, what was your question, Joe?
No, you were just explaining that the opposite, they're tight before they go into, because I was like, is everyone just as relaxed? But I guess it depends, Ryan. If you're going to interview them at the first thing in the day, they might have more energy than if you're the last interview of the day, so it must be tough. Yeah.
And I also have to say, Joe, like you've been complimenting me a lot, and people do tend to compliment me a lot about these interviews being different, but on the flip side, I work really hard on the interviews, so much so that to the point where I'm almost ridiculously prepped for the interview. Like I'm not just interviewing, I'm prepping what their answers are going to be. My questions are designed to them, knowing that they can go one direction or another direction, and I have a response to whatever direction they're going to go to. And I don't sleep the night before. I'm completely prepped. I rehearse and I rehearse and I rehearse, which is a good but also a bad thing, because at the end of the day, once you are in this industry long enough, you have to be able to sustain yourself in a way that is organic, and you're not putting on or not being a version of yourself that you're not true to yourself, kind of thing. And with these interviews, you want them you only have 4 to 5 minutes with them, and to be organic and to be yourself and to make sure it's a nice, tight, entertaining interview. It's sometimes a bit of a challenge. So on the flip side, yeah, it's fun, it's great, but I'm also ridiculously prepped as well, which sometimes can work and sometimes can't. Because Joe, I'll be honest with you, I have also been asked to leave interview rooms before. I've also had my interviews cut where publicists have said, no, you can't continue this interview, can you please leave the room? I've had a lot of the stuff that you've seen are the good interviews. There have been some pretty bad ones as well, I have to be completely honest. Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty, but I don't think anyone has ever had a glistening showreel where it's been impossible to please everyone. But you raised something really key there, and we tend to also look at career advice for people who'll be watching this, and you've just nailed something on the head, that practice makes perfect, right? And to go in as prepped as you physically can is so much better than winging it. Can I ask you a question? When you first got into this industry, what was your advice with dealing with nerves?
That's a great question. Nerves really are part and parcel of the job. but it's how you, not so much, I mean, at the end of the day, it's inevitable. You're going to have nerves. You're going to be nervous. You're going to have a bit of anxiety. But it's, I guess, how you deal with it internally. Like, you have to get over the fact that you have nerves. Like, at the end of the day, you have to just accept it and know that just because you have nerves doesn't mean everything has to go to shits. Like, you have to be able to deal with those nerves and turn them into energy into the interview. And there's nothing better, the feeling you get when you've done a great interview or you've done a great content piece, that rewarding feeling. That's what I thrive for. That's why I do what I do, is the idea of having that moment of bliss after you walk out of the interview room and going, oh, wow, that was a great interview. That made it all and completely worth it. So once you do it enough, those nerves can be turned into just pure adrenaline and a pure energy, and you use that to your advantage. So when you first start out, it's a little bit tough to deal with it, but once you, again, prep and have enough practice, you'll be able to use that to your advantage.
That's fantastic advice. And I think that nervous energy that people have can sometimes be a little bit, create angst for people. But as you say, if you focus that energy into a positive, then it can also drag you through tough situations. I mean, the adrenaline can surge you into the right direction.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And that's not just for what I do. I mean, for what you do as well, and all the DJs and artists and everyone in this industry as well now, that performance is key to everything, and you can't let anything kind of put you as a barrier to your performance at the end of the day. And yeah, I'm sure some of the biggest DJs and some of your artists that you have playing your shows get the nerves before playing, but then if you use that to your advantage and completely take advantage of that and use it for the crowd, and that'd be great. Because at the end of the day, if you have someone that goes into these interviews, or you have a DJ that comes and plays and thinks they're amazing and they don't get nervous anymore, like, they must get pretty bored of their job pretty quick. You know what I mean? They just get complacent almost. Yeah.
I've seen some of the biggest names. I mean, even on our launch night, we had a Zouk Singapore resident called Zushan who plays every single Saturday at Zouk Singapore to 1,000 people, and he was literally rocking back and forth, and he delivered an incredible set. But I said to him, "Are you nervous?" He said, "Joe, I always am." I even saw Mike Tyson say that before every single fight he was shitting himself, and you kind of think, Mike Tyson shitting himself? I don't believe it, but he did. So after radio and TV, Ryan, you've done some incredible content. I love it. The Malaysian Grand Theft Auto is something I've seen, and I've actually taken a step back and gone, I love it when you see really smart content, you think, and you admire it when you think, I wish I'd done that myself. How did that come about?
Yeah, I think I told you this as well before we jumped on this live. I'd had this idea. I'd been sitting on this idea for many months, and anytime a company came to me and said, "Hey, we want to make a video," and I was like, "Great, I've got this Malaysian Grand Theft Auto," they'd be like, "Nah, well, we're good. I think we'll pass on that." Until one company called Edigo got in touch with me, and a friend of mine works there, and just he said, "We love your content. We trust you. Just come up with an idea." And I was like, "You know what? Specifically, you come up with this idea. Give me a couple of days." Obviously, I had the idea already, but just to try, work on how I can present it to them. I said, "Hey, I've got this idea called Malaysian Grand Theft Auto. I think it could be relatable, but also completely original at the same time, because I don't think anyone's done it here before." I sold them the idea and they loved it, and they thought, let's start shooting it. And we went and we shot it. And the shooting process and the editing process was a bit of a bitch, but we got through it. And by the way, I edit all my own videos as well. So it was quite a process. But at the end of the day, and this is again why I do what I do, the reaction and the was great, man. Like the way people react to the content that you do makes it all worth it. And that's why you want to put those hours in. That's why you want to create something original, because you want it to resonate with people. And the idea that people are resonating and still talking sometimes about this Grand Theft Auto videos that I did is a great feeling, man. So thanks again for bringing that up.
No, not at all. I mean, we're going to have your social tag at the bottom of the interview anyway, but if there's other content that people can see of yours, or maybe some of your old interviews online, where's the best place to check them out?
I mean, social media, I'm personally not as active as I should be on social media, but I do have a few IPs and a few projects that I work on, like, for example, Having Skin. We just finished a talk show recently called the Late Night Show with Having Skin. We've been working on that show for about a year now with an amazing team, the team of Kicks. I'm sure you know Ion and all that, who are incredible at production and all that. And this is a huge collaborative effort. So I was the head writer for that show in terms of the parody ads, the interviews and everything. That was a great, rewarding thing. So you can check that out on his YouTube channel. I also am the main writer for a puppet called Harry Cox New York. as well as this Malaysian, crack puppet who just talks shit and stuff. And I have a lot of fun of him and writing his content as well. You can check him out on social media. But in terms of me, I think 2020 for a lot of people was a bit of a write-off. In terms of that, we're all aiming for 2021 now as the year to kind of restart everything in terms of the industry, hopefully anyway. So that's my plan as well, to get out a bit more in the year 2021, whether it be more content or more IPs or more projects. But I really do hope that 2021 will be the year that we all thought 2020 would be.
This is a fascinating interview because it's rare to have so many different tiers to it. And I want to deep dive into something you just said. So how do you find the difference between performing, as in being in front of the camera, to the writing process? Because the writing process is a huge skill to have, and is that a passion first and foremost? And secondly, how do you get the motivation to do it, or what inspires you to start writing content?
It's very easy to find inspiration because there are so many creative people out there and so many creative platforms and stuff. Even TikTok, man. I don't know, Joe, if that's a bit above you or below you, but I do dive into.
I'm not cool enough, Ryan. I use TikToks, but I'm not coordinated enough, and I'm not cool enough to be on TikTok. That's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's some creative stuff coming out of TikTok, man. Like, some of these kids are doing some really great stuff, and that's one thing that inspires me a lot is the younger generation. And I think as the older generation tends to be a little bit more, and I'm not throwing shade at the older audience here, but we tend to be, or the older audience generation tend to be a little bit more skeptical about new technology and all that. Whereas these younger audiences, I'm always thoroughly impressed by the stuff that comes out. These kids that are doing amazing things with cameras and amazing content on like TikTok. It's almost like a bit of a Vine as well. So in terms of finding inspiration, it's not hard. You find it everywhere if you look hard enough. In terms of me writing versus being in front of the camera, writing I really enjoy because I'm able to have a blank canvas there and try and create something truly original. Whereas presenting it, I don't always have any real say sometimes in what I present, whether it be TV or on radio, or if I'm hired to do MC gigs or present on whatever show it is. I won't have the luxury of being able to have full control over the quality or the content that I'm delivering. So therefore, I'm put in a bit of a box. Whereas writing is just a blank canvas. I can go crazy if I wanted to, and that is a passion in itself. Yeah, being able to create. I think the idea of creating, especially in today's, in 2020, just because the vast amount of resources that we have. You can now shoot on like this. You don't need like a 20,000 ringgit camera. You don't need, you don't need a production company. You don't need a company supporting you. You can literally, everyone has one upload button that you can all share and upload content. And that is a great thing to have in your life and to inspire people to creating content. So, I would say it's a passion, but I hope I don't just stay on social media. I hope to venture into bigger and better content in years to come, hopefully.
You mentioned something that I really want to lead on to, and it's something that motivated us to speak in the first place, about a piece of writing you did that inspired me. You wrote a piece recently, especially around the time when mental health issues are very prominent in the public eye, which I think is a fantastic thing. I was watching a campaign for European rugby players who are trying to, the hashtag is Kill the Stigma, which is about men speaking up and not feeling that it's weak or pathetic to have issues at home. Obviously, in our industry, the music scene has always been focused on trying to encourage people who are going through tough times to speak up and to focus on ways to either listen or talk. And you recently wrote a piece that I read that was shared by Ida that focused a little bit on this itself. Do you want to elaborate a bit further for those who haven't read this piece?
Yeah, that article you're referring to, was in light of mental health, and I guess primarily with men, because like what you said, men aren't the most open when it comes to sharing their feelings and discussing mental health. In fact, in general, whether it be you're a male or female, it still hasn't quite normalized, at least not in Malaysia anyway, about people discussing mental health. Because I just don't think, not because it's people will look down on it or anything, perhaps, but maybe because it's just not normalized to that extent. Like what you said, it hasn't been destigmatized, because even me growing up, I thought mental health or even therapy was only for people who, for lack of a better term, were sick-minded or a little bit crazy, but the idea of mental health being relatable to everyone, which it is, by the way. Everyone has a mental health disorder or develops it in their lifetime. It doesn't matter your income, your age, your sex, your background, your race, anything. Like, everyone can and may likely suffer from a mental health disorder in their lifetime. And normally when you say mental health or mental health disorder, people usually think of something extreme like schizophrenia or personality disorder. But really, anxiety is a form of mental health disorder. And the year that we've had, it's really, a lot of people have gone through their mental health uncertainties. And I'm glad now I'm seeing more platforms that are discussing it. But in terms of masculinity, the idea of a man sharing his feelings is vulnerable. And men generally, and I don't hate to generalize men, but generally, men aren't see vulnerability as a sign of weakness. So I think we're still far away from men really discussing mental health, at least on mainstream media.
I think you raised so many good points there, and a great focus on the fact that it's not a weakness. Everyone in the world has problems. I mean, there'd be serious lies being told if even the most powerful men, I mean, you look at world leaders, haven't gone home and shed a tear over the stresses that exist. And irregardless whether you're a world leader or you're a house husband or you're a teenager, I mean, we just did some statistics that they say that half of adults suffer from mental health problems, 25% of teenagers and 13% of children. And when you put that into the equation of the whole world's population, that's huge numbers. And I think it's as simple as you say as anxiety. I know many people who struggle with anxiety, who it can actually encompass and can ruin their whole day, even the smallest thing. And perhaps if they had an opportunity to communicate and get stuff off their chest and resolve issues and get help with moving past what might be trivial for you and I, but is a huge deal for someone else. And just because it's trivial for you and I doesn't mean it's not a huge deal. The opportunity just to talk, I think, is phenomenal. And it's just sad that maybe some people feel pressured not to do such a thing, or they don't feel comfortable to do it, because you know the saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. But this year alone, I've had some tough times like everyone. We've faced retrenchment, sadly. We've shut all our outlets, and being able to pick up the phone and just talk to a couple of friends to say, hey, I'm not doing so well, has helped dramatically in comparison to just locking yourself up in your room and saying, oh my God, I don't know what to do. It could be as simple as asking advice, which I think a lot of men are also very bad at doing.
Yeah, and if you look at the year that we've had with the lockdown or the CMCO, MCO, whatever you want to call it, people were literally, forced to stay at home. And I don't want to make, obviously there's a lot of other people out there that have it much worse, and they went through much worse, like you said, losing jobs and, even losing lives in that sense. But for the majority of people who were staying at home or were forced to stay at home, it was almost like you took their lives away from them, or their normal working lives, and you put them sometimes alone at home. And what do you do when you're at home in this environment for that long? You have no choice but to reflect. And when you have that moment and an extended period of time to reflect, you can't help but look at yourself and look at your life and question everything. And that takes a toll on your mind. And honestly, man, I know some of the most positive people in the world who couldn't deal with the MCO, just because the idea of being alone or being cooped up away from their lives was detrimental to the way they thought, and it added more to their mental uncertainty, which is why I think at the moment we're seeing a lot more people now discuss mental health, just because, like what you said, it's become so much more relatable in the last 8 to 10 months, people being forced to reflect on their own lives. And therefore, when you have enough time to reflect on your own life with that amount of time on your own, sometimes it can be it can induce anxiety, which is sad to see. Yeah.
What's your number one piece of advice, if you can share with someone who might be watching this, who might be struggling inside?
I'm going to try my best not to sound like the most boringest person in the world, but I think two things. One, as cliche as it sounds, I really do think you need to confide in someone that you trust, someone that you're able to share these feelings, and someone that is willing to listen. Because at the end of the day, that's that's the best way to get something off your chest, is to confide in someone. I think another way as well is, I read somewhere recently that that the one feeling that trumps any other feeling in the world is gratitude. No matter how depressed or down or how much anxiety you're feeling, if you just practice a little bit more gratitude every day, and I think because we're humans, we tend to be a little bit pessimistic at times, and we tend to think about the things that we don't have in our lives. Sometimes think about what you do have in your life, and reflect on that. And I promise you, if you do that daily, practice a little bit of gratitude in your life, you'll come leaps and bounds, and really acknowledge what you do have in your life compared to what sadly a lot of other people don't have.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal advice, and that's a really good point, well made. I recently read about the 8 out of 10 rule, that we tend to focus as human beings on the 2 items we don't have going for us out of 10 rather than the 8 we do, because I guess for some reason there's a value on a possession you don't have greater than a possession you already own. So if you have 8 out of 10 fantastic things, you've got a fantastic partner, a fantastic job, a fantastic home, don't look at the Lamborghini you can't afford or the summer holiday you're not going on. Look at all the amazing things you do have, because as you said, there's some people that only have 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. And if you turn to me and you said, if you give me 100 ringgits investment, I'll give you 80 ringgit on top back, I would take it in a heartbeat. I would bite your hand off. But as human beings, we don't look at the physical or mental side of what we have in the same factor. So that gratitude is so vital.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what you just said is relatable to just almost everything in life. Even on social media, if you go like the GTA video, for example, if I was to go on there and see the amazing feedback and comments, it would obviously be a great thing to see. But I see one bad comment of some guy going, man, this video is shit. That's going to affect me for the rest of the day. Why? Why is that? Why, as a human being, must I hone in on such negativity and let that affect me? Do you know what I mean? These are things that we need to brush off as human beings, and be able to accept that, you know what, you can't please everyone, and you should accept the fact that you can't please everyone. But but at the end of the day, who's hurting more? Am I hurting more, or is that person who feels the need to comment on your video in hurting more? I would say the chances are that person is, because he wants to convey negativity in something that's primarily positive. So yeah, as human beings, we tend to focus on the negative for some odd reason, and that's something that I think is easier said than done. But it's something that us as human beings need to be able to deal with, I think, a little bit better.
I think you've summarized that really, really well, and in a way that no one else has that I've spoken to before, especially the focus on people who tend to display negativity outwardly are probably having problems of their own internally, and we shouldn't always acknowledge it. And opinions are very easy to distribute. And if someone doesn't necessarily have the nicest thing to say about your content, so what, it's not for them. It's for many, many other people. And I think you just resonated something that in the social media environment that we live in is really, really important, to focus on the good and not be drawn down, because you don't know their motivation for it. I interviewed Joe Z, who has his own Netflix show in the USA, and he turned around and he said, we're in a world now where we used to only have to impress our friends, but now we have to impress complete strangers, and it's an impossible act to do. Ryan, that's an incredible insight, and so many different layers we got into. I have to ask you now, you just focused on mentioning 2020, let's call it a write-off. As I always say, let's just put a line through it. What can we expect from Ryan in 2021?
You know, Joe, I've made the mistake so many times of telling people what I'm going to do and then never following through with it. You know what I mean? I can tell you that I do want to continue making great content, of course, hopefully more rather than in small doses. But in terms of like specifically, I will still be writing. I will still be focusing on other IPs and hopefully creating other ones. At this point in time, I believe that everyone, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm making a monologue speech here, but I do believe that in every industry that you're in, you need to reinvent yourself every 10 years. If you want to be successful, if you want to have longevity or success in whatever you do. And I'm currently going through that. I'm in a transitional period where I've left radio and TV, and yes, I've done a bit of content, but right now I'm focusing on what I'm doing next. And that, I can't answer that question and say, hey, I'm definitely going to be doing this, but I will hopefully, that's the plan, to do something really, really special. I would love to, some of my ideas I would love to do is, I've always been a big fan of, your Jon Stewarts, your John Oliver, your Hassan Minhaj and stuff. I would love to create a show that dives into that topic, something that's of course, has a comedy aspect to it, because I think comedy is such an undervalued, sometimes, especially in Malaysia, an undervalued tool to commentate on real issues. And I think a show like that hits the nail on the head sometimes, like a Hassan Minhaj, Patriot Act and all that, which doesn't happen in Malaysia yet. So to create something original like that would be something I would dream of doing one day. But I tell you what, Joe, I've tried many times. I've shot little pilots. I've written. It is the hardest thing to do on your own. It requires a bit of a team of writers and all that. So, and research, not to mention. So that's the aim, something like that. But I can't say I'm going to do it for sure, just because it's just trial and error at the moment. But hopefully I'll be doing something special in months, if not years to come.
Well, the very best of luck with it, Ryan. First and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time. It's phenomenal. Much love from us to Ida for connecting us. It's phenomenal. Reading the article was the best part of my day a week or so ago, and then I reached out and you immediately responded, which was fantastic. And I think you've offered us such an insight over such a variety of entertaining topics, but also deep ones as well. So we are deeply in gratitude for joining us today, and thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Joe. By the way, I should make a shout out to you as well, because I know I'm certainly not one of your, I'm not in the KL Zouk scene or the DJ scene. So for you to talk to someone like me and stoop down to my level,
Don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. You were face to face even before we did our first interview, and to be honest, I'm not Jennifer Lawrence, and I'm definitely not Hugh Grant. Playing tennis with two beautiful women, unfortunately. That's not the case. But no, seriously, Ryan, what you've managed to do is talk on such a wholesome level, and you do have phenomenal experience. You're an expert content creator, but you've also deep dived into probably what is our biggest motivation as a topic to focus in on. It really is an important topic. We hope that anyone that watches this, even if one person just reaches out, even if they reach out to you or me via social media and just say, hey guys, thanks, I got a problem, then we've achieved something, and that's what I really hope for.
Yeah, man, this is a really important issue, like you said, so I'm so glad we were able to dive into it. Joe, before I let you go, since we're recording this and this is going up on air, and please don't cut this part out, does this mean I get free access to any Zouk I want?
Anytime, dude. The one you want to go to, Ryan, is the one in Vegas. That's the new one. Don't worry about me. You got to go and find Ron, who's the other presenter on Zouk Digital. He's the head of Zouk Las Vegas, and show him this, and he will just walk you. That's done. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time with Singapore. You go to Las Vegas. That's the one to go to.
All right, done. Ron, Joe, I've written your names down. I'm holding you guys to it for the rest of my life.
That's the one, my friend. Well, listen, Ryan, you take care. As I said, big love to Ida for connecting us. Huge appreciation for that. And the very best of luck with what you do. But judging from your track record, 2021 will be as big a success as the previous years.
Yes, and Joe, hopefully the next time I see you, I still hope you be sporting that mo, because and hopefully I can join you one day. You know what I'm saying?
If we connect after CMCO, which will probably be like early 2021, it will probably be like a millimeter longer than this. So that's
I look forward to it.
Take care, Ryan.
Thanks, Joe.